Dragon Age Inquisition is an action-adventure RPG developed by Bioware and published by Electronic Arts. And Dragon Age is a franchise that's been around for a while. And to be honest, I've played Dragon Age 2 and Dragon Age Origins, but I never actually beat those games. Dragon Age Inquisition would be the first Dragon Age game I actually beat, and the only reason I ended up beating Inquisitions is because I got Dragon Age the Veilguard for free via PlayStation Plus. Now this is my third playthrough of Dragon Age Inquisition, but this would be my first one I actually finished, and one thing it made me realize is that Bioware is the Bethesda of Electronic Arts, and I know it's going to piss off some people to generalize Bioware like that, but let me explain how Bioware is the Bethesda of EA. See, Bethesda has been making the same game since Morrowind. The formula has just gotten more dumbed down and more simplified to appeal to a wider, more modern audience, as well as a new coat of paint. Whether you're playing Fallout, Skyrim, or Starfield, it's all the same exact fucking game. Now listen, Bioware also more or less makes the same game just with a new coat of paint. It wasn't really like that as much back in the day because they had a lot more room to branch out and experiment with different franchises, but now they have to focus on their more marquee franchises, and you see the same exact formula a lot in games like Mass Effect, Dragon Age, and even back in the Baldur's Gate days. Now, Bioware games also follow a very simple formula. You are the protagonist. You must go kill the antagonist. You must recruit allies along the way. And you must get to know those allies and go on missions in order to flesh those allies out, because the true story comes from the adventure with the friends you made along the way. It's not a bad formula. In fact, it's a formula you see utilized in a lot of JRPGs. But unfortunately for Inquisitions lacks a lot of the immersive elements that gives JRPGs that charm, and even JRPGs that came out around the time as Inquisitions kinda beat the shit out of Inquisitions. But Inquisitions is not a bad game, it's just not a particularly great game. Dragon Age Inquisition suffers from dull repetitive combat, and unfortunately, that dull repetitive combat is something you'll be doing for 90% of the gameplay, but to be fair to Inquisitions, you do get a specialization almost halfway through the game, and this does change up gameplay by a meaningful amount, particularly by making you stronger, but even then, it doesn't provide enough variety to make this the vast majority of gameplay for 60 to 100 hours. The story starts off with you as the protagonist as you wake up in this sort of blight, and as you're in this blight, you witness a lady known as the Divine about to be killed by a bunch of random people who you later discover were a group of Grey Wardens that were being manipulated by the antagonist of the story. Now when you come to, you wake up in the custody of Cassandra, and she's really close to executing you because everybody believes you had something to do with the murder of Divine Justinia. You also happen to have a magic hole in your hand that looks a lot like the rifts that's been opening up in the sky, and you can't seem to explain it. To start the game, you essentially embark on this quest in order to prove your innocence, and as you embark on this quest, you recruit allies along the way, with the first allies you recruit being an elf named Solas, a dwarf named Varric, and the human that was about to execute you named Cassandra. Now as you close more and more of these holes in the sky, people start referring to you as the Herald of Andraste. Now you can lean into this whole herald business, or you can just leave it alone. It really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but as the Herald, you are now the leader of this group of soldiers, outcasts, and renegades who are now helping you close the breaches in the sky and fight back the demons. So as you're building up your army and acquiring more and more allies, your camp eventually gets raided by a horde of demons, and this horde of demons is led by none other than Corythius, who is the major antagonist of the story. And Corythius wants the hole in your hand back, because that hole in your hand is referred to as the Anchor, and apparently it's a plot device for later in the story. And so they launch a full-scale assault on your camp, and at this point, you have no choice but to fend off the demonic assault long enough for your forces to make a tactical retreat. After escaping Haven and tracking through the snow and going through a lot of hardships, sadness, and trials and tribulations amongst what remains of your band of misfits, you guys eventually come to your new base of operations, that being Skyhold. Now, once you reach Skyhold, the story basically continues as usual. Throughout the story, the vast majority of your planning will take place through the war table, as through the war table, you can achieve a bunch of side objectives that can only be accessed via your agents, and you can also visit new areas through the war table, assuming you have the power and influence to get to those areas. As you visit new areas, you usually have a couple of simple objectives you need to achieve in that area in order to progress the story, but there's also a bunch of side objectives littered throughout the map, and so it's very easy to get sidetracked with a lot of these side objectives because some of them don't have anything to do with the main story, but some of them do, and they can affect the main story in crazy ways. But eventually, I got so bored with a lot of these side quests because most of them are just glorified fetch quests that once you accrue enough power, a lot of times you'll just end up focusing on the main story. Now, there was one mission that broke up the monotony of go here and kill everything on the map and a bunch of random side objectives. This mission was called Wicked Hearts, and it was an espionage mission. Wicked Heart sees you attending a ball of royalty, bureaucrats, political figures, and other people of high influence throughout the land. Now, in this mission, you can truly make whoever you want come out on top. Maybe you want to keep the queen in power, and you can do so by exposing the wrongdoing of her enemies. Maybe you want the Grand Duchess to be in power. You can do so by letting her assassinate the queen in front of everybody. Maybe you want the elves to be in power. You can do so by exposing the dirt on everyone else except the elves. Or maybe you say fuck it and you want to expose everyone's wrongdoing and force everyone to work together. Wicked Hearts is a great breakup to what you're doing 90% of the time, which is go here, kill the bad guy, and occasionally kill the dragon or solve a puzzle or two. Wicked Hearts was extremely fun, but even Wicked Hearts was kind of bogged down by this reputation system that you had to progress in order to progress the mission. But even then, the mission was definitely one of the most memorable in the game. You also have the option to romance a character in Dragon Age Inquisition. Some characters can only be romanced if you're a certain race. Some can only be romanced if you're a certain gender. Now, the thing about the romance system is you kind of have to really put in the work to get the romance to where you want it to be. Some of the romances have a lot of prerequisites for you to get the ball rolling, while others have you flirt one or two times and then you're instantly in a relationship. I'm looking at you, Blackwall. I chose to romance Josie, and it literally took me to almost the end of the game to get into an official relationship with her. And I haven't even had the chance to get into her pants yet. And I was also leaning towards Sarah, who it would have been a lot easier to bang, but after getting threatened by Liliana, I chose to just stick with Josie. Anyway, as you keep venturing through all these lands and taking down Corythia's generals one by one, he'll keep throwing more and more enemies at you in an attempt to stop you, but nevertheless, you keep pressing forward. And this guy, Corythius, he's just so unintimidating. Like, this dude just seems so much like a villain of the week type of dude. Nevertheless, we proceed. Now, after recruiting Morgan via the Wicked Hearts quest, we learn that Corythius is trying to reach the in-between, or the fucking upside down, or whatever the fuck. It's basically a reverse version of the Fade, and since we have his anchor, he cannot simply enter the Fade in full body form. So if he cannot get the anchor back, he's going to use elven magic to improvise. Now, Corythius is looking for some shit called the Well of Sorrows, which is an ancient elven power source of sorts, but we beat him to that power source, and Morgan chooses to drink from the well as she will now be bound by Mithril, the ancient elven goddess. But as it turns out, Mithril is actually her mother, who I thought we killed in a previous game, but apparently her mother is bound to this elven goddess, so whatever the fuck. Anyway, with the knowledge we received from Mithril, it gives us the edge we need to now go face Corythius and take him down once and for all. So we ascertain that Corythius' power is tied to a dragon, so in order to kill Corythius, we must also kill his dragon. But Morgan states that she will handle the dragon and she will keep the dragon busy as we take out Corythius. So the final mission sees us at the war table surrounded by all our comrades preparing to go rout Corythius. But before we can do so, a big ass void appears in the sky, and it would appear Corythius is taking the fight to us. Now we gather up a party and we prepare to go meet Corythius in battle once and for all. And I remember reading something that stated, don't bring Solas because Solas leaves and you'll lose all the gear he has on him. But in retrospect, I wish I did bring Solas, considering the fact that he's the antagonist for the next game. Now we get to Corythius, and Corythius monologues a little bit, and then we proceed to engage Corythius in battle. Now this is pretty much a 3-phase boss fight. As you fight Corythius, once you get him to about half health, there'll be a sequence with Morgan fighting the dragon in the sky. But unfortunately, the dragon will get the better of Morgan, and this will result in Morgan falling out of the sky and her dragon form will reverse. Fortunately, Morgan is still alive, but this results in us having to fight the dragon after all. But after we kill the dragon, we go and finish off Corythius once and for all. And to be fairly honest with you, this fight was actually extremely underwhelming. This fight was pretty easy, and I'm sure I've had harder fights in the base game, but to be fair, I am playing this on easy mode, and the reason I am playing on easy mode is because the combat in this game is so tedious and it's such a slog that I have a lot more fun playing the game on easy mode and mowing through the enemies. Plus, considering the fact that the game is way longer than it has any right to be, I just needed to finish this game once and for all. Upon defeating Corythius, we use the anchor in our hand to shoot a beam of light through the void in the sky, ultimately ending the blight that was Corythius. Now, as Corythius' story comes to an end, Solas pops up, and Solas is sad that the orb Corythius is carrying is broken, and I'm not sure what the significance of this orb is. I think this orb is supposed to be some sort of elven relic that Solas was secretly on the mission to get, but he unfortunately ended up failing, but whatever the fuck. Upon defeating Corythius, you wind up back at Skyhold as you get a chance to celebrate your victory, and you get to interact with each one of your companions before retiring to your quarters. And to be honest, I really wish it would have let me take Josephine to my quarters, considering the fact that we're in a relationship, but I guess that's just asking a little too much right now. Now for me, the coolest part of the game actually came at the very end. As the game is ending, there's a tapestry that tells you the results of all the decisions you made along the way. And this is awesome because, as it turns out, even though I thought the story was a little mid-tier, I did achieve all the results I wanted in the game. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Dragon Age Inquisitions. Thank you for watching.
"'Tis said that Corythius woke after his long slumber and found the world gone awry. He fought to bring back those days of magic and shadow, to raise himself as a god and set things right. Now, we are left with a scar in the sky to remind us of what almost was. It tells us that a great victory against chaos was won, but left the world forever changed. Consider the mighty empire of Orlais, where Empress Celine remains on her golden throne. The civil war is ended, but a new war rages in the shadows. Gaspar, it seems, has learned his lesson well. Even the elves have no rest, with Briala's uprising rocking the empire to its core. Fortunately for Celine, her gratitude towards the Inquisition has remained strong. Some claim she clings too tightly to the Alliance. Others know it is all that stands between her and defeat. The Grey Wardens of the South slowly rebuild in the months following the events at Adamant. They declare it time for the Order to emerge from the shadows, to join the rest of humanity in fighting their ancient foes. Rumors abound that they severed ties with their leaders at Weishaupt, and that a bitter war now rages between them. What becomes of Hawke is unknown, save that all news out of Weishaupt soon ends. Does the sudden silence indicate a battle within, or something far worse? 1 month after the defeat of Corypheus, the Chantry names Leliana as successor to the Sunburst throne. Given the name Divine Victoria, she first declares an end to the Circle of Magi. The mages will now govern themselves. She opens the priesthood to other races, declares support for the Inquisition, and rededicates the Chantry to the principle of charity. Divine Victoria is controversial from the start. Several new sects arise, resisting her reforms and declaring her rule a threat to the faith. She meets with their leaders, urging unity. Miraculously, her words take root, and for now, the Chantry remains strong. The Inquisition's mages, the former rebels led by Grand Enchanter Fiona, are left with a choice. When Leliana disbands the circles, they leave the Inquisition and reform the College of Enchanters as a new order. The college, they say, will allow mages of the South to gather in peace and seek new solutions to age-old problems. For the moment, it appears to be working. Mages are enjoying unprecedented acceptance throughout Thedas. And what of the Inquisition itself? Its military might has grown, now rivaling that of kingdoms. Fear of the Inquisition's army has become the true source of its power. I leave Skyhold now, knowing that power will continue to grow. The Inquisitor is a symbol to many, a leader of the changing world order. To others, she has become a target. They linger in the shadows, waiting for their day to come. When it does, the Inquisition shall stand, ready